This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Good morning. My name is Greg Wadley with CTC and Associates. I'm the Clear Roads Administrator. We're here for the final webinar for the project entitled Expanded Use of AVL GPS Technology. This research effort is led by Ming-Shun Lee at AECOM. Before I turn it over to Ming, I want to let everyone know that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the Clear Roads website at a later date for viewing by you or your colleagues at your convenience. We also ask that everybody stays on mute today so that there's no background noise. However, if you have any questions or comments, please enter them into the chat box and we will address them at the end of the presentation. I think that's it, so I'm going to turn it over to Ming and the rest of the research team.
All right, thank you, Greg. And as Greg mentioned, this is a final webinar for this project. And my name is Ming-Shun Lee. I'm the principal investigator for this project. And together with me today are two other presenters. That's the lead researchers on our team, Mary Kroll and Dan Nelson. And they will be helping me go over some of the project results in today's presentation. Next slide, please. Before presenting the project results, we would like to take the opportunity to express our appreciation to the Clear Road program, the Technical Advisory Committee, and MINDOT for giving us the opportunity to work on this project. We would also especially thank the project committee, subcommittee, and Greg and CTC Associates for providing support to this project and review the products and deliverables. And we also would like to acknowledge the tremendous support from the agencies participated in the interviews and case studies. Next slide. In today's webinar, we are going to first provide a brief project background, then go over the project tasks, which include literature search and review, surveys of practices, agency interviews and case studies. We will then present our findings and recommendations, as well as indicate the products that have been produced for this project. Next slide. AVL technology has been widely used by highway maintenance agencies for winter maintenance operations. As the technology has evolved over the past decade, maintenance agencies have explored the potential to utilize AVL for non-winter maintenance to improve asset tracking and management. Non-winter road maintenance can include road sweeping, paint striping, stripe painting, roadside mowing, and vegetation management, and setting up and operating work zone along roadway for infrastructure repair and maintenance, such as pavement and guardrail maintenance. The purpose of this research is to help highway maintenance agencies make more informed decisions to better implement AVL technology for year-round maintenance operations. The goal of this project is to continue building upon prior research and help highway maintenance agencies optimize the value gained from the acquisition of AVL systems by deploying them year-round rather than being limited to winter maintenance operations. So to achieve this goal, the project gathered and synthesized experience and lessons learned from public agencies and industry in using AVL for non-winter and year-round maintenance activities, and provide recommendations to support agencies for initiating, ramping up, modifying, or upgrading their AVL implementation for year-round maintenance operations. Next slide, please. The key issues investigated in this project included first, the agency's decision-making process and consideration related to procurement, implementation, and level implementation, data collection and management, and as well as consideration of emerging technologies such as connected vehicles. Implementation, that's another key factor. This area includes issues such as the type of vehicles, such as heavy-duty trucks, street sweepers, and mowers, and their applications or activities performed, strategies and steps for implementation, issues encountered during implementation, experience gained, and lessons learned. And implementation of AVL on agency versus contractor vehicles. And those are some of the key issues. And there was also an interest regarding if agencies transfer AVL units between winter and non-winter vehicles, and also interest in the process involved in doing so. Next slide, please. Data collection and management is another key topic area investigated. This included what data was available, how it was collected, was the data accuracy issue, was there any issues related to accuracy, and how was the issue overcome. Yeah, we also touched on staffing and resources for data collection and management. Data utilization was also an emphasis on this project. We look into various use cases on planning, operational analysis, performance monitoring and management, etc. We also gather information on benefits and costs, and to assist in better planning for AVL implementation. Next slide, please. The methodology to complete this research included 4 steps. We first completed a review of literature, relevant literature, and surveys were then conducted to gather information from agencies and vendors. These first 2 steps helped us gain a better understanding on agencies' experience in implementing and utilizing AVL for year-round maintenance activities. We then use the survey responses. We select agencies for interviews and to gather more detailed information and conducted case studies. The fourth step was to document research results and findings in a final report, recommendations to support planning,
Sorry, this is Dan here. I can't quite hear Ming at the moment. Does anyone
Yeah,
else have
same.
audio issues? Okay.
Ming, you're frozen if you can hear us.
Ming may need to log back on. I'm not sure. Something may have frozen there. I could try to keep going here just to keep the presentation moving along. Or Ming can probably interrupt me if he rejoins. Greg, would that be all right, Greg? I presume it would be here. So I think Ming was through this point here about findings, recommendations, and the final report here. So Mallory will get into some detail on that final report later on here in the presentation. I'll try to pick up here and go through some of these points on the literature review. So these were the sources of literature that we reviewed early on in the project. Utilization of the AVL GPS and technology case studies. That was a project that both Ming and I were involved on back in 2017 and 2018. So we built upon the review of that information for this project. as well as the other sources of literature that are listed here, reviewed, and these were all summarized within that literature report that is one of the deliverables that's been provided for the project here. I'll pause on this for just a moment here to see if there's any other points to raise here, but this information is all within that literature review summary that's been prepared. Survey of the practice. This was a part of task 2 of our project. The purpose here was to gather information on AVL and GPS systems used for non-winter maintenance activities, and the purpose was to gain an understanding of the state of the practice with respect to that technology's use for non-winter maintenance. So 3 online surveys had been developed targeting the groups listed there: highway maintenance agencies, AVL and GPS vendors, as well as non-highway maintenance agencies. And the survey topics for highway maintenance agencies are listed there near the bottom of the slide. So this was all information that was gathered, and you can see the box on the right side of the screen here is indicating to whom those surveys were distributed. Clear Roads members were solicited through the Snow and Ice listserv. We also reached out to other groups as listed there on the right side of the screen to get as many highway maintenance agencies as possible on this. So I believe the next slide has some information on the total agencies. So we gathered 52 agencies had responded to the highway maintenance agency survey. Among them were 31 total agencies that used AVL and GPS technology for both winter and non-winter maintenance only together. So that was our targeted group. We wanted to find agencies that were using that technology for both types of maintenance activities. A total of 12 agencies indicated only winter maintenance, and a couple non-winter maintenance only. And as part of the vendor survey that was developed, this table here lists the number of vendors that were invited, as well as the number, I shouldn't say invited, we reached out to. We gathered 4 responses total through that survey, and these are the agencies that did respond to that survey. So with the information gathered from that survey, from all of those surveys, this slide here is listing the selection criteria we reviewed and used to analyze all of the responses to those surveys, specifically the agencies using AVL and GPS for both winter and non-winter maintenance. So these are the points here that we gathered, and the survey summary document that was prepared for this project goes into much more detail on how we looked at all of these points here and arrived at a selection of the agencies that we did review for the project. The bottom point here is noting that we wanted to find 1 or more agencies either not within Clear Roads or did not conduct winter maintenance. And I'll move on to the next slide here. These are the agencies that were selected for in-depth case studies: Missouri DOT, Illinois DOT. The Alabama DOT was the non-Clear Roads agency and also non-winter maintenance agency that responded to the survey that we selected for learning more information on how they utilized AVL and GPS technology. We also selected the 2 city level agencies, City of Farmington Hills, Michigan, and City of West Des Moines, who were also non-Clear Roads member agencies. Following our case study preparation, we did reach out to additional agencies as listed here, and I have a slide later on to go into some detail on the information we gathered from those agencies and how they transferred AVL between winter and non-winter maintenance vehicles. And this slide here is indicating the types of non-winter maintenance activities performed by those agencies for which case studies were developed, as well as the fleet sizes that were indicated by the agency staff who responded to the surveys that were sent out earlier in the project. This was a part of the criterion that we had reviewed in selecting agencies for case study interviews, in that we wanted to select agencies with a large and widespread vehicle fleet used for non-winter maintenance activities. And the Alabama DOT here was one of those non-Clear Roads member agencies that we selected. So these fleet sizes were indicated through the survey responses that we had gathered earlier in the project. And it ranged from mowers to paint trucks to lightweight vehicles and tanker trucks as well. The level of AVL and GPS data utilization for non-winter maintenance activities was another one of the criterion we reviewed through the surveys that were collected. The purpose here was to select agencies with a high level of AVL and GPS data utilization for the case study interviews that were conducted later on in the early part of 2022. These uses included operator safety and security, speed compliance, process automation, and paperwork reduction, among other uses. And these became some of the subjects that we discussed with the agencies in the case study interviews. The listing of subjects that were covered in the interviews for each case study report are listed on this slide here. We provide an overview of each agency's winter and non-winter maintenance operations, and also some detail on their AVL GPS equipment procurement and implementation processes. We describe the AVL GPS hardware and software that was utilized, as well as any special integrations of that equipment with the vehicles, and I'll go into some detail on the following slides about the types of data that were collected and how that data is used. The case study reports also present some information on system benefits and costs, as well as various types of issues that were encountered and overall lessons learned on each implementation. So now with that, I will get into the separate case studies that were prepared for each of the 5 agencies that were selected from the review of survey responses. I'll present some of the key points from each of those studies here on the following slides. So the Missouri DOT implemented an AVL GPS system from Geotab with the primary goal of improving driver safety for all districts statewide. Driving safety was a main focus of many of the agencies we spoke with during the project. MoDOT began with a pilot project in 2015 with 3 of their districts, and that system worked well. However, different distributors had provided Geotab equipment to each district. So MoDOT wanted to expand the system statewide through a single distributor starting in 2018. We also learned that their heavy-duty vehicles were used on a year-round basis, and so the Geotab equipment there was not moved from one vehicle to another between winter and non-winter maintenance seasons. The types of AVL and GPS data collected for non-winter maintenance operations are listed in the table here. MoDOT collected more pieces of data than any of the other agencies we interviewed for the project. Those non-winter maintenance activities included roadway paving, herbicide treatment, street sweeping, mowing, and roadway striping, among others. Other pieces of data were collected to support use cases for improving safety, which are illustrated on this slide here. This was a safe driver behavior reporting dashboard that was created to measure seatbelt usage and the number of times that vehicles traveled with speeds above a certain threshold. This also included a pilot demonstration of sharing data from vehicles when overhead lights were activated by vehicle operators. And so that was sharing with a couple different third-party agencies, one of them being Waze, which is shown in the image on the left here, and the other was a third party named Stellantis that provided warning alerts through in-vehicle systems in select passenger vehicles. And this is an image of one of those. Stellantis is a manufacturer involved with vehicle manufacturers such as GMC and some others that you may be familiar with. So that was a pilot to test in-vehicle messaging there. That was briefly described by the Missouri DOT, and we have included that within the case study as well. The Illinois DOT shared a similar story of driver safety becoming a key driver for why they deployed AVL on a statewide basis. They also began with a pilot project, this being in one district, and they have since expanded their system to all districts statewide. They were different in that they used a pre-existing statewide procurement contract that was already in place with Motorola as the vendor. Related to safety, there was a push button that was installed as part of the vehicle radio that would send vehicle location instantly to supervisors that could be alerted to a safety concern that was being reported by vehicle operators. Different types of equipment were also used for different use cases as part of the system. And the different types of data are noted here on the slide as well. They include vehicle location and alarm notifications, as well as paint striping activity as being on or off, and the locations and hours of water pump usage during flood periods of the year. The top image in the right is showing a historical replay of a full route of an IDOT paint striping truck that was taken back in October of 2021. The blue chevrons you see in this image here are indicating that the paint carriage was up and that no painting was being performed, and the green chevrons are indicating that the paint carriage was down to allow for paint striping. Users could then click on any one of those chevrons to bring up a blue circle around, like in this case here, that would indicate, bring up a pop-up box to show some additional information on what was being performed at that time. Road weather information systems were also a part of this interface. RWIS data is brought into the live viewer for users to view live weather conditions gathered from the field. And that bottom right figure is illustrating the type of information that can be viewed for one of the sites near St. Louis as well. And the last point here was that the system was also used to support sandbagging operations during flooding season so that they could monitor where vehicles were traveling to respond to various incidents, and was also used as part of a COVID-19 pandemic response to help track where equipment was being delivered. So they were using it for multiple uses in that case. The Alabama DOT is the one non-Clear Roads member agency and also non-winter state that we spoke with. Their main goal was installing an AVL GPS system to improve the efficiency of their herbicide spray operations. Trimble was the vendor chosen for vehicles dedicated to those types of operations. In prior years, it was noted that the amount of time spent on handwritten reports by vehicle operators could range between 30 and 90 minutes for each trip that was made. That information then needed to be entered by hand into a state maintenance and management system, which also created some additional opportunities for human error in the data reporting process. So the Alabama DOT desired to automate the process of environmental reporting and reduce any potential points of where human error might become involved. There was an integration with the GIS database to show areas of treatment that should be avoided by the operators as well. And the Trimble hardware on DOT vehicles was dedicated to those specific vehicles and was not transferred to other vehicles. A second AVL vendor named Comet Tracker was used for fleet management of state vehicles and service patrol vehicles. The Alabama TOT also used a pre-existing contract for procurement of that equipment. Data collected by the AVL GPS system is also noted here, the main one being herbicide treatment information for EPA reporting that was taken with the Trimble devices. Vehicle mileage and speeds were tracked through the use of that Comet Tracker system for other fleet vehicles. The DOT was also piloting the integration of the automated herbicide spray operations with their maintenance and management system as noted. When we spoke with them, they were still comparing the automated data collection with their hand-collected data, so they weren't entirely relying on automated data collection, but that's where they wanted to get to with their system. The image in the upper right part of the slide here was a form that could be completed by operators in those herbicide spray vehicles using that Trimble device tablet, actually, where they could tap on individual fields and enter information directly or select information from a drop-down box. And then after it was completed, it could be submitted electronically and sent in to help automate the overall process. The image in the bottom right here was taken from the Comet Tracker system of showing a historical record of one of those vehicle routes. We also spoke with two municipal winter maintenance agencies at the city level. This is the city of West Des Moines. When we spoke with them, they were in the early stages of testing out Geotab as a system, which was replacing a prior system that they were previously using. The city wanted to use Geotab to support other non-winter maintenance operations. One of the early findings that they had with their system was that, I'm sorry, one moment. One of the early findings they noted was that the system could help reduce agency liability and tort claims that came up in non-winter maintenance work. The data items that they collected were primarily vehicle location data, vehicle mileage, and vehicle speeds, and this was less than the other state DOTs that had data that they collected. It's just given that the city was early into their use of the Geotab system at the time. The city noted that the system had recently supported storm cleanup, which came from a heavy windstorm that came through in the fall of 2021. That was a case in which Geotab units were installed on city vehicles, and that helped identify where storm cleanup resources were in the field. Lastly, we spoke with the city of Farmington Hills. They installed a system from Skyhawk in 2017. It was chosen based on its ability to integrate with their existing spreader controllers on their winter maintenance vehicles. Similar to other agencies, their main focus was improving operator and public safety. The system is on all of the city's fleet vehicles for maintenance, which get used on a year-round basis for other activities such as gravel road maintenance or other activities as needed. Similar to West Des Moines, the system helped address citizen complaints of damage that had been caused to private property. With that system, the city can identify exactly where their vehicles have been, so that can help reduce liability for any repairs that need to be done. There are additional use cases that the city acknowledged could be tested, but they have not gotten there based on their agency needs at the current time. And also similar to West Des Moines, they collect much less data than state DOTs given their lower use of the system. Following the case studies that were presented previously, there was a desire to reach out to other agencies that could share their experiences with transferring AVL and GPS equipment between vehicles and between winter and non-winter seasons. And so we scheduled meetings with the three agencies listed here. The New Hampshire DOT and Dave Gray specifically helped describe their system, also from Skyhawk, and the devices that are transferred between snowplows and mowers, street sweepers. This also involved an integration of those units with other equipment on mowers and street sweepers. Mark Goldstein with the Massachusetts DOT noted that they had one district that transferred AVL units to non-winter maintenance vehicles, which was done by internal staff. but there was no integration with other equipment on those specific vehicles. And Massachusetts DOT now does have a plan to equip their fleet with Geotab. That was back in 2022, as noted here. And finally, we spoke with the Colorado DOT to gather some additional understanding on how they used their system of equipment. While they noted that they did not transfer AVL equipment to other vehicles, there were some good experiences that they shared on how AVL and GPS systems have improved their asset tracking and also assisted with other areas such as documenting fuel usage and even helping to recover stolen vehicles in some cases. As noted, and this information is all gathered and presented within the final report as well. So at this point here, I'll turn it over to Mallory, and she can get into some more details about the final report.
All right, so I'm going to go over some of the key findings. So there's unfortunately very few agencies that transfer the AVL equipment between winter and non-maintenance and non-winter maintenance vehicles. A majority of agencies implement their entire fleet. 4 of the 5 case studies performed winter and non-winter maintenance activities, but maintenance activities are utilized year-round. So the transfer process can be very straightforward. There's very minimal calibration that is needed when moving equipment around, just making sure you change on the end user site which vehicle it's in. New Hampshire integrates with a PTO link on the mowers and a left, right, center switch on the sweepers. And then MassDOT collects telemetry data only without integrating the AVL into some of the other equipment. So they're just getting location data. And then AVL can be integrated with in-vehicle equipment through that onboard port, that OBD2 port. Hydraulic systems for switches and broom positions, sensors on sweepers, spray controls for herbicide spray vehicles, PTO links on the mowers, dash cams, DMS, and GIS software are some of the in-vehicle integrations that we've seen. Next slide. And some of the common uses, as kind of mentioned above, we got the tort claims are a big one, operator safety and security and behavior, just overall asset tracking, especially with, that was mentioned with Colorado with all their fire rescue, things get placed in certain areas and then they need to be recovered later on. Vehicle diagnostics, utilization records for miles and hours of operation. Task-based could be, or we saw things like sweeping, miles of sweeping, acreage of herbicide treatment, striping on, off, and amount of paint and the amount of paint use, and acreage of mowing complete. Maintenance, operation planning, so using the data for planning, and then also recovering stolen vehicles and equipment. Next slide. Some of the capabilities of the AVL technology that have not fully been realized or have not been fully realized, and that's due to many things such as lack of staffing resources to test the functions and requirements to really integrate into some of these other practices. There's not a heavy need for some of these currently, so they haven't seen the benefit of doing them. Agencies want to focus on the primary features they desired from their systems, and they just haven't gained sufficient experience with some of these other practices. And some of the key benefits for the non-winter maintenance activities, so improving operator safety, promoting speed compliance and seatbelt usage, so safety is always a big one. The other big ones are the liability and the tort claims. So we heard a lot of people that are able to justify their system just on a few, cases of that. Report automation, and then improving vehicle maintenance through things like the vehicle diagnostics. Some of the lessons learned and the recommendations moving forward. So with any of these kind of technologies, especially ones that are going on the vehicles, the communication with the operators and the maintenance supervisors regarding the value of the system is critical, making sure you get that buy-in, providing them with some, operators with information of how this is going to benefit them and benefit everyone as a whole to minimize that big brother syndrome, and understanding of agency needs to better define specs and scope of work when procuring or piloting some of these technologies, deciding upfront what data to collect and utilize to help set the expectations. Too much data can create overload on supervisors. There's a lot of data coming in, but if you can't do anything with the data, then it kind of just is there and it's not benefiting anyone. Working closely with the vendors to develop a custom report so that you can use the data properly and you can really fully realize the benefits. Plug and play systems through that onboard port and T-harness offer flexibility for installation and integration. And then really having a champion to manage the program is critical. And also just starting off small with pilot studies to really make sure you're getting what you want and it's feasible before going across your full fleet. Next slide. All right. So as mentioned, all this information is in the final report, and the final report has obviously a brief of the overall study. It has the 5 in-depth case studies, as well as some information on those additional interviews that were done to really fine-tune and focus in on a couple of the areas that we wanted to further investigate. And there is the link to the project page, which will have all of this documentation. All right, that is our presentation. Any questions?
Yeah, so we had some questions, of course, and you saw that, Mallory, because you responded to one of them in the chat box, or had a question anyway. But I would like to open it up now that the presentation is over. If anybody has any questions, you can certainly still enter them in the chat box, or you can just speak up and ask any questions you may have.
Yeah, sorry everybody, this is Min. I'm back. That's just computer technology issue. My laptop just froze, and just like the weather here in Minnesota, where I'm located, it's frozen everything. But I'm back.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Ming.
The question in the chat, the question in the chat, in case some people are on the phone, was just clarifying the lights that are needed for the alert system, and that would be the external lights of the truck. So as soon as those flashing safety lights come on the vehicle, that's when the Haas alert would send that information to Waze. So I think it was just clarifying which lights on the truck we care about.
Yeah, I think Paul clarified that the Paul is from MoDOT, and that's their system. It's provided the insight on that.
Yep, thank you, Mallory. I appreciate that. Excuse me. Well, not hearing anything else, just to let you guys know, I will get this recording posted to the project page on the Clear Roads website. Yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you to the research team for putting this together. The research, just so you know, the final report and the report brief are both up already on the Clear Roads website project page as well. And yeah, as soon as we get this up there, all deliverables will be complete and approved by Clear Roads. So thank you, everybody.